Separately, we are hearing from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a leading Democrat right now, who is reacting strongly to the president's comments and saying in effect that his strikes today amount to grounds for impeachment. Let me read in part what we're hearing from her in the form of a statement saying the president's, in her words, disastrous decision to bomb Iran without authorization is a grave violation of the Constitution. And she says the congressional war powers. He has, in her words, impulsively risked launching a war that may ensnare us for generations. She adds, it is absolutely and clearly grounds for impeachment. And then finally, separately, we are hearing from the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, who writes in part, thank you, Donald Trump. And he adds, today, President Trump proved that never again is not just a slogan, it is a policy. Obviously, the idea of never again following the Holocaust.
So, I came across some strong reactions lately from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a prominent Democrat. She's really fired up about the president's comments, saying they could very well lead to impeachment. She described his decision to bomb Iran without proper authorization as a serious violation of the Constitution. According to her, this impulsive choice could risk dragging us into a conflict that might last for generations, calling it a clear case for impeachment. On another note, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations expressed gratitude towards Donald Trump, saying that his actions today reinforce the idea that never again is more than just a slogan. It's a policy. This phrase obviously resonates with the history of the Holocaust. Now, shifting gears, the House of Representatives kicked off a debate on impeachment articles against Donald Trump on the 6th of March in 2026. This isn't just some behind-the-scenes talk or strategizing. It's the real deal on the House floor, discussing substantive charges against him. The articles accuse Trump of abusing his power by starting an unauthorized war with Iran, which goes against the Constitution, along with corruption tied to the Department of Justice, including the Epstein cover-up and an illegal prosecutor situation just ruled by a federal judge. If those articles progress and a vote happens, Trump could become the first president in American history to face impeachment 3 times. He's already calling it Witch Hunt 3.0 on True Social shortly after the debate kicked off. That response reveals just how cornered he feels because the accusations are serious. They claim he started a war that injured 150 Americans in just one day without any congressional approval. Dismissing it as a witch hunt doesn't defend his actions. In fact, it suggests he has no solid defense at all. Trump had even suggested this moment was on the horizon, warning folks that if Republicans didn't win the midterms in 2026, they would be facing serious consequences. It's honestly hard to believe he actually said that out loud. Impeachment is on the table. The landscape has shifted faster than expected, especially since 2 Republican members switched parties and 5 others backed a bipartisan subpoena. Now the House majority relies on just 1 effective vote. To add to the mix, the ongoing Iran war has recently seen 150 wounded, marking its bloodiest day yet, while the approval ratings sit at around 41% and 35% of Americans are worried this could turn into a never-ending conflict. What we've been hearing about impeachment has turned from whispers into an active debate on the floor, and the gap between talking about it and actually voting is closer than it's ever been during this presidency. Before diving deeper, let's be real for a moment. Mainstream media is pretty tricky these days. That's the reason we started Pump Politics. We aim to bring you genuine stories, real context, and we skip the corporate nonsense. If you want to keep up with the headlines, consider joining our free newsletter. It delivers news straight to your inbox every single day. Just click the link in the description. And if you're interested in supporting what we're doing, join us and become part of a community that genuinely values the truth. Now back to the situation. President Trump just held a news conference where he revealed a new timeline for the ongoing conflict in Iran. He indicated that the military objectives are almost complete and hinted that the war could wrap up in just a few days. But he also suggested it could drag on as long as he deems necessary. Meanwhile, the fighting continues to escalate, with both sides targeting critical locations that have global implications. For instance, Israel recently hit an oil depot in Iran, igniting a massive fire, and there's footage showing flames raging down a whole street. The Iranians retaliated by attacking a refinery, sending smoke billowing into the air. This entire conflict is pushing gas prices to soar, with the cost of a gallon jumping nearly 50 cents in just the past week, and in California, it has reached over $5. Let's break down the real issues being discussed in relation to the articles of impeachment. They focus on two main points. First, there's the war against Iran that started on February 28th, launched without any authorization from Congress and completely defying the constitutional framework. Let's take a moment to chat about what's been going down in Congress concerning war powers and impeachment. It's quite the story, really. So, there's this argument that the power to declare war should rest in Congress, not just with the president. It's something that legal experts and many Democrats have been pointing out since those military strikes started. But now it's not just a theory laid out in some legal paper. It's made its way to the House floor as an actual article of impeachment, and the weight of the situation has grown enormously since late February. We've had 7 Americans lose their lives and 150 others injured in a single attack on March 10th. Not once was congressional authorization requested for these strikes. It's like a free-for-all with no end in sight, no clear conditions for victory, and a staggering cost that could hit $50 billion or more each week. Oil prices are above $100, and we're seeing the worst layoffs in January since the financial crisis. Switzerland even declared the entire war illegal under international law, while Trump was telling his Republican allies on March 9th that it would be wrapped up quickly, only to have the bloodiest day of the conflict happen the very next morning. Every twist and turn in this saga strengthens the constitutional argument at the heart of the impeachment discussions. This isn't just some dry legal debate about executive power, it's a clear constitutional violation that's already led to tragic human consequences. While the president, who started it all, seems to struggle with figuring out how it all wraps up. Then there's the second pillar of this situation, corruption within the Department of Justice. We've got the Bondi and Epstein cover-up, a bipartisan subpoena, and an investigation into perjury. A New Jersey prosecutor's triumvirate just got flagged by Judge Brand as illegal. Another sign of an administration pushing the boundaries of constitutional power, and there's a pretty vicious accusation regarding the pizza prosecution that Bondi didn't really address during her hearing back on February 11th. Through both of these problems, a clear pattern emerges. Trump acts as if the Constitution is simply a suggestion, using powers that he legally shouldn't wield to get what he wants, no matter the legal framework. Now, the House is debating whether this kind of behavior amounts to an impeachable abuse of power, and it really does. The articles of impeachment clearly state it. Also, it's important to give a nod to Representative Al Green. He has stood out as a dedicated advocate for impeachment accountability among the House Democrats. Throughout Trump's time in office, we've seen him face multiple crises, and just recently he refocused on impeachment with a resolution he filed again in December 2025, followed by a renewal in March 2026. This renewed filing clearly names Trump for his death threats against judges, especially after a New Jersey prosecutor made a ruling on March 9th. Those threats add to the growing list of serious accusations against him. What's striking here is that the claims of these death threats aren't just exaggerations. They're real and documented. Federal judges in different parts of the country have received alarming threats following Trump's public attacks on them, where he has called them out by name and referred to them as crooked judges on platforms like Truth Social, where he talks to millions of followers. His supporters have a history of taking his words to heart and reacting aggressively, which just heightens the urgency of this situation. Now, the inclusion of these threats in the impeachment articles shows a personal safety side to the whole accountability argument. It really adds a human touch to the broader legal issues that have been raised about war powers and the appointment clause. We're dealing with judges who are being threatened because Trump has made public comments attacking them whenever their rulings don't go his way. All of this is part of the discussion happening on the House floor, and it's interesting to note that Trump himself has predicted that he would be impeached if the Republicans lose in the midterms of 2026. That's quite a remarkable and revealing thing for him to say during his second term. It shows he realizes the seriousness of his situation. He knows he's on a path that leads to accountability, and he has been aware of it for a while now. He doesn't seem confident that his behavior would hold up under scrutiny if Democrats take control. His prediction of impeachment highlights that a Democratic majority would not only have the motivation, but also the legal grounds to proceed against him, and he's openly stated that. This means that the witch hunt 3.0 narrative he introduced during the House debates isn't a sign of real confidence in his innocence. Instead, it seems like a strategy to sway his base by framing the legitimate charges as mere persecution. The fact that he made the prediction first raises a contradiction, making it clear that both can't be true at the same time. Let's dive into the whole situation surrounding the recent impeachment debate in the House. It covers a lot of ground: constitutional issues, political strategies, the coalitions forming, and the important historical context of what we're seeing unfold right now. It's fascinating to look at the constitutional side of things, especially focusing on the charges related to the Iran war. This particular argument is the strongest one yet presented against Trump across all three of his impeachment situations. Looking back, the first impeachment revolved around a phone call with Ukraine and his holding back military aid, which was a serious abuse of power. However, that issue required digging into intent and causation, which gave Republicans room to argue about whether they had a valid dispute over the evidence. The second one was tied up with the events of January 6th, which also raised valid concerns, but came with questions about what really qualifies as incitement and whether Trump's words hit that mark. Now, this time around, we're dealing with something very different. This impeachment is centered on a clear constitutional principle and an executive action that's not up for debate. The Constitution, specifically Article 1, Section 8, clearly states that only Congress has the power to declare war. On February 28, Trump initiated a military operation against a country with 90 million people without asking Congress for approval. That's not up for dispute. It's a well-documented event. The real kicker is that determining whether this is indeed an impeachable offense doesn't involve getting into debates about intent or causation, or whether specific statements met certain legal criteria. It simply means applying the clear language of the Constitution to an action that everyone agrees happened. The Constitution flatly states that Congress declares war, and in this case, Trump didn't do that. The result? 150 Americans were injured in just one day, and there have been 7 fatalities total, all amidst a war that seems to have no clear end in sight or achievable goals, costing over $50 billion each week. This constitutional case is about as straightforward as impeachment cases come, and the human impact of this constitutional breach is as well documented and undeniable as any evidence seen during previous impeachment efforts. Plus, there's a whole separate issue about corruption within the Department of Justice that's also enough on its own to support impeachment, regardless of the war powers charge. You have the Appointments Clause violation documented by Judge Brand, which highlights the installation of prosecutors meant to place loyalists in key positions. It's striking how a federal court has actually found the administration engaged in unconstitutional behavior. This isn't just some accusation or claim. It's a formal ruling pointing to a clear violation of the Constitution. It relates to the Epstein cover-up, which involved a bipartisan subpoena, a perjury investigation, and some questionable redactions that ended up protecting abusers while putting victims at risk. This all ties into misrepresentations made to Congress and showcases how prosecutorial power has been twisted for personal political gain. The whole situation reflects a Justice Department that's shifted from a body meant to enforce laws fairly into a tool serving the interests of the president. The framers of the Constitution, who included impeachment powers for exactly this reason, were genuinely worried about any misuse of executive power for personal advantages rather than for the public's welfare. So, the charges related to DOJ corruption aren't just wild claims. They actually stem from documented and judicially recognized unconstitutional behavior. What's interesting is how 5 Republican votes have crossed over on the bipartisan subpoena, while the House majority is razor thin, just 1 seat. These factors shift the dynamics, making the impeachment debate more than just a symbolic gesture from a minority party. To impeach, you need a majority in the House, and given the current situation, it's feasible since those 5 Republicans have already shown a willingness to distance themselves from Trump regarding serious accountability actions tied to the same DOJ corruption that the impeachment articles discuss. Now, while it may seem like a big leap from voting for a subpoena against the Attorney General for openly breaking federal law to supporting impeachment articles based on that same corruption, it's actually not as far as it appears. Sure, the political stakes for voting on impeachment are higher, the implications are more pronounced. But those Republican lawmakers have already taken a stand that suggests they believe the administration's behavior is serious enough to warrant a break from party lines on the record. And as more evidence surfaces, along with judicial decisions, it adds weight to the situation. The ongoing conversation about accountability in politics is shifting. Casualty counts and approval ratings are front and center, along with fears surrounding endless conflicts and the ongoing Epstein scandal. It seems like the political landscape is changing, especially for those still holding out in competitive districts. There's a noticeable movement towards taking responsibility. It's not guaranteed, but it's definitely heading in that direction. What's really changing the game is the floor debate itself, which is turning impeachment from a distant possibility into a pressing legislative matter. Trump's response, labeled as Witch Hunt 3.0, is interesting not just as a strategy for communication, but also as a political decision that has real and documented effects on his coalition and his standing within institutions. Each time he uses the witch hunt line in response to accountability actions, he's opting to rally his base rather than uphold institutional trust. This approach hits home with the most hardcore MAGA supporters. It taps into the persecution narrative that has defined Trump since 2016, keeping his loyalists fired up and in opposition, which benefits his brand in the short term. However, there are three notable issues that come with it, and they tend to pile up over time. First off, it pushes the crooked judges narrative, which has brought GOP trust in the judiciary to record lows and is undermining the conservative legal movement's most precious asset. Secondly, it doesn't address the specific constitutional violations that the articles of impeachment are based on. Instead of dealing with the facts at hand, Trump often reacts to the process, leaving the factual record to build without challenge. Lastly, it speeds up the political trends that are nudging Republicans in competitive districts toward voting for accountability, making the choice between loyalty to Trump and upholding constitutional principles ever clearer and visible. The witch hunt framing is starting to wear thin, especially in an environment where the witches are turning out to be real, documented constitutional violations confirmed by federal judges and bipartisan congressional votes. It's important to recognize the historic stakes of this third impeachment attempt. No American president has faced impeachment 3 times before. This is significant, no matter how the immediate vote count ends up. So, if we look back at history, impeachment has been a rare event, with only Bill Clinton facing it once. Then we had Donald Trump going through it twice during his first term, but if he happens to get impeached again in his second term, he would make history as the only president to be impeached across 2 separate terms of office and in 3 different proceedings. That's quite the title to carry, and it's a defining aspect of his presidency that no amount of communication strategy can completely manage. You see, a presidential legacy is shaped not just by how one party frames it, but by the formal institutional records too. Impeachment articles, floor debates, votes, and charges that are recorded in the constitutional proceedings become a part of the permanent history of that presidency. It's kind of clear that Trump understands this, especially when he predicts he'll face impeachment if the Republicans don't do well in the midterms. He's trying to frame the narrative with his Witch Hunt 3.0 talk ahead of time, as if he's writing history before it even unfolds. But the truth is, the articles of impeachment, the debates, and the evidence will be historical documents too, and these records are being shaped in real time with events that aren't going away, no matter how the current political scene plays out. Now there's this connection with the upcoming midterms that makes March 6th, 2026, an especially important date in this ongoing saga. It will be a significant political moment regardless of how things go with the specific articles of impeachment regarding the vote count. The discussion around impeachment has become a campaign issue in every competitive House district, meaning candidates from both parties will surely be fielding questions about it. There are serious themes at play here, like the unauthorized war that has already led to the deaths of 7 Americans and injured 150, alongside documented corruption from the Department of Justice revealed by federal judges. These serious issues will be front and center in political ads, debate questions, and town hall gatherings leading up to November 2026. Voters in those tight suburban districts, who played a role in giving Republicans their very slim margins in 2024, will be weighing these impeachment articles against a backdrop of rising oil prices over $100, layoffs from what feels like a looming recession, and an ongoing war that's costing $50 billion weekly. The impact of the political climate is definitely palpable, and it's going to be a critical point of discussion for many as the elections draw near. The debate around impeachment is pretty grounded in reality, and it's playing a significant role in shaping public opinion. It's interesting to see how accountability is now influencing approval ratings, with 4 out of 10 people showing support and a noticeable number of Republican voters switching sides. Currently, the impeachment articles are at the forefront of discussion in Congress, so let's unpack what this all means for the political and legal landscape going forward. To start, the constitutional case being presented is arguably the strongest one we've seen against Trump throughout the three impeachment proceedings. This case is rooted in a clear, undisputed action, initiating the Iran war without the necessary authorization from Congress. According to the Constitution, it is Congress that has the power to declare war. The military action happened, but they didn't authorize it. And this isn't about interpreting fraught legal texts. It simply points to a specific part of the Constitution highlighting that there was no congressional green light for military action against Iran. This makes it a straightforward case. No need for star witnesses or deciphering complex phrases. It's just a matter of drawing attention to Article 1, Section 8, and marking the clear gap between when things happened and when Congress was supposed to give the okay. Backing this up are some hard facts. 150 Americans have been injured, 7 have lost their lives, and the financial cost is around $50 billion per week, all without any clear end in sight. Next up, there are 5 Republicans who voted for the Bondi subpoena, acknowledging serious breaches of federal law. These votes could be pivotal, determining whether the impeachment debate transforms into an actual impeachment vote and whether that vote can earn bipartisan support. They've already shown a willingness to separate from their party by voting for accountability on issues linked to the corruption highlighted in the articles. The pressing question now is whether the escalating evidence, including the casualties from the Iran war, judicial decisions, shifting approval ratings, and upcoming midterm elections, will nudge these Republican lawmakers enough to consider backing an impeachment vote. It's not a guaranteed outcome, but it's definitely not just a pipe dream anymore. The foundation for this decision has already been established by their past votes. Lastly, I can't help but note Trump's own prediction that impeachment could follow a Democratic victory in the midterms. This insight is crucial because it reveals his perspective on the political dynamics at play, which provides valuable context as we navigate this unfolding story of accountability. So, here's where things stand. On 6 March 2026, the House kicked off a floor debate about impeachment articles against Trump, charging him with abuse of power due to the unauthorized war with Iran and corruption within the Department of Justice. There's a renewed resolution from Representative Al Green, which even adds in death threats against judges after some recent court rulings on 9 March. The articles highlight strikes that took place on 28 February without Congress's approval, alongside the unfortunate state of 150 Americans who were wounded on 10 March. The DOJ corruption has been documented by federal judges, and there's a bipartisan congressional subpoena backing it all up, a clear pattern that shows abuse of power. What's really interesting is that 5 Republicans have already decided to break ranks over the Bondi subpoena, and 2 more have even switched their party affiliations. The majority in Congress is razor thin, with just 1 vote making the difference. Approval ratings sit at 41%, while 35% of Americans are increasingly worried about endless wars and the costs, which are hitting $50 billion every week. Now, Trump had previously predicted that this would happen if Republicans lost control in the midterms. Yet instead of providing a solid defense against the serious constitutional questions raised in the articles, his response to the floor debate was simply witch hunt 3.0. This reaction actually reveals a lack of a substantive defense, especially since the specific accusation is that he initiated a conflict that resulted in injuries to 150 Americans without seeking Congress's permission. With public sentiment at 41% approval and concerns over prolonged conflict at 35%, people are clearly starting to pick up on the implications of his non-answer. So, the drumbeat we've been hearing about for weeks has turned into an actual floor debate, and this discussion is now part of the campaign for the 2026 midterms, showing that matters are evolving much quicker than Trump might have anticipated. Each week, the war drags on, and there's still no sign of a resolution. With every new court ruling and the ongoing count of casualties, we're seeing more and more evidence piling up that supports the articles. While a third impeachment isn't guaranteed, it's definitely on the table now. It's not just a theoretical idea anymore. We're looking at active proceedings backed by solid claims of constitutional violations. This is happening with a president who's currently sitting at a 41% approval rating in a House where the majority is only by 1 seat, and there are a couple of party switches and a handful of Republicans who have already expressed their views. They can't simply brush it off with a post on social media, no matter how many times he yells witch hunt in all caps. So that wraps things up for today. If you're still here, I really appreciate you watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, join the newsletter, and stick around because the impeachment proceedings are officially in progress, and I'll be covering every little development in real time. Catch you in the next update.